Miranda, you and I have known each other for a long time, good friends for a long time. You are an atheist, you come very much from the secular environment world, you're the president of one of the most respected and in fact the largest European environmental charity, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. I come from 30, 40 years of working with the faith on environmental issues. Here we are for Celebration Earth. For those listening in, what is this about at heart? What struck you?
The idea of celebration, I think, is a wonderful thing when we're faced with so much doom and gloom about the environment. Actually, to take a moment and celebrate the good things, talk about the positive messages that there are out there, and empower people and enable people to go out there and make a difference themselves. I think what struck me about Celebration Earth is the storytelling. It's actually the power of story. I knew there would be a great sense of community. I knew that the different faith groups would bring community into this, that the environmental group, the arts groups would all be talking about community. But I didn't for one moment realise how important the storytelling was going to be, how powerful that was, because you're talking about stories about people, talking about species, those individual stories which are so inspirational, that touch us deep down in our souls. And again, I'm using that word empower, but they are empowering and they really make us want to make a difference, but not just on our own, by bringing those communities of people together, knowing that together we're stronger. It's all about people power. So that's what I feel is worth celebrating.
In the film that you'll see in a moment, we created a ritual of mourning for the species that have gone extinct. And it's powerful.
I'm journalist Chloe Ball-Hopkins. The stories I usually cover are around sports or issues with disabilities, but never about the environment. There was an opportunity to go to a church for a very strange funeral in a very small village, and I had to go and see it for myself.
Morning Martin, it's Chloe. I've pulled up in the village, but I'm not sure where the church is.
Where are you in the village, Chloe?
I'm pulled up next to the red phone box.
Okay, very straightforward. Carry on. Go up the hill, and as you go up the hill, just the road only goes in one direction, you'll see the church tower right in front of you. Good to see you. Now, are you all right for reading? That's fantastic. Brilliant. Oh, hello. Oh, I'll let you in. Chloe, I think we've got a special seat down here for you. Is that all right? Brilliant. Welcome. Welcome to North Stoke Church. Right, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to this wonderful and strange and ancient church, this ancient place. We believe that there has been worship and a sense of the sacred here for probably 5,000 years. Welcome to a most unusual service and event. There is a Christian tradition that when someone dies in a community and it's their funeral, the death knell is tolled. And the death knell is simply the church bell, which is rung for every single year of that person's life, one knell for each year. Today, we are going to talk about and to ring the death knell for members of our own community who have died. But these are the 160 species around the world that have become extinct in the last 10 years. Today, we are going to mourn them. We're going to name them as they go from us, in the same way that we would name somebody who had lived with us in this community and who's now gone. There is a kind of modern myth in the environmental, economic, political world that if you bombard people with data, this will somehow change their behavior. No one was ever converted or had their behavior changed by a pie chart. We're changed by stories. And one of the stories that we have not told, really, is that we have caused the death, the extinction of hundreds and hundreds of species. And that could be maudlin. It could be that we just spend the rest of our time beating our breasts and saying, oh my goodness, how wicked and dreadful we are, and all the rest of it, which will just leave us stuck. Because what these deaths call us to is to change. For God's sake, we have to change before we destroy more. But you cannot move on until you've acknowledged what you've done. Our responsibility is that we have been given immense powers. And let's be frank, that's a far more accurate story than to sort of say, well, we're all just here to drift happily along with all the other species. We have the power to destroy. We have the power to mutate species. We have the power to destroy entire ecosystems. So to pretend that we don't have dominance is to hide in a myth. The question is, not just to those of us who are religious, not just to those in the Abrahamic faiths, so Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but to all of us, what in God's name do we do with that power? What do we do next? I invite you now to remain in your seats for a while and meditate on our role in the story of life on earth. St. Lucia Skink. The Barbados Racer. The Pinta Island Tortoise. The Navassa Rhinoceros Iguana. Ponce de Cri. The Santa Cruz Pupfish. The Catarina Pupfish. The CO2 Mad Tom. The Waiaotoa Forget-Me-Not. Vissiani's Star of Bethlehem. Adam's Mistletoe. The Desert Beton.
I was the last of my kind. How I wish I was alone. For too long you've been blind. Another name on the list of those already gone. The church bell tolled.
The Union Nactus.
For our loss, my heart breaks.
Finch's Duck.
Every chime, no shallow grave.
The Bermuda Flicker.
Wooden cross mark the end of the line. I was the last of my kind.
Is 160 a lot?
Wish I
Or is it actually remarkably few, given how much we've destroyed and how definitely? There's no context to that figure.
long you've been blind.
The figures are only useful as the story in which they're set.
Those already gone.
I think our problem has been that we want to feel we are superior. So we've invented all kinds of stories and myths and legends in order to give us a sense of our special place.
Away.
We've got to actually find a way of telling stories, not a story, We want to see plurality. We want to see a richness of possible stories to live in.
Another day, I was the last of
Capricorn, rabbit, rat.
how I wish I was.
The Santa Maria weevil.
For too long you've been blind.
The little flat-topped snail.
Name on the list of those already gone.
The Samuel ground beetle. The Pico ground beetle.
Must believe
Christmas Island pipistrel.
heal, though the scars will always be.
The long-eared mouse.
Remember them, remember me, for the desert meets the sea. I was the last of my,
The Rodriguez blue pigeon.
how I wish I
The North Island snipe.
was for too
And the South Island snipe.
Another name on the list of those
Underwood's musurana. The Bermuda saw-whet owl. And Gunther's dwarf burrowing skink. The cunning silver side.
From an emotional point of view, it was not hard to connect to what I learned from Martin. These creatures were never understood, some of them were never known about, and then they were just gone. And that's how it can feel for a lot of people living day to day with numerous health conditions or disabilities. This year, so many people have been listed as being vulnerable because of what we're facing as a human species right now. And it's the same for all those animals, but they don't have the understanding from anybody, ever, and then they're just gone. How can I say that there's a world out there for people with disabilities to be living in or for athletes to thrive in if actually we're not looking after everybody else in that world?
That song, this bugger jumped us with this. I mean, I couldn't speak at the end. You had us completely. One of the things that we know in religion, preaching doesn't do much but music, song, ritual, paintings, creative. And we did not know that this song was coming, and then it came. And honestly, it was not a dry eye in the house, and it still,
Very
still
powerful.
moves.
Faiths obviously have ritual and ceremony, and I think if we're not involved in a faith group, we often don't have those. But what I loved about your film in the church and about the ringing of the bell, that we were commemorating and we were mourning the loss of a species, and there was a moment of reflection and sorrow, and it was really poignant. It wasn't just a headline or a data sheet saying we've lost another species, this one's gone, that one's gone, and you know, and there's no emotion attached to that. I think the moment you take you create a ceremony around that, and you stop and you think and you listen, it means so much more. And so actually, maybe as environmental conservation organisations, we need to embrace the idea of ceremony a little bit more. Don't always think that it has to be a faith group that's using that, that we can have our own ceremonies. So they don't have to be in a church, or they can be outside on a hilltop. Why can't we do more of that?
And in terms of this notion of celebrating Earth, Celebration Earth, how do you see that shaping what you as an individual, as well as your role in RSPB, What impact might that have in terms of, say, the mass movement programme that I know RSPB, along with WWF, are very keen to enable to happen? Not to own, to enable to happen.
I think this idea of just negative messaging as far as the environment is concerned, it's important that we know what's going on and we understand the sort of severity of the destruction, but I think if we don't hear a positive message, then we don't feel empowered to do anything. But if I hear a positive message, if I hear about somebody out there doing something, that makes me want to do something as well. We all have a common goal. It doesn't matter what our beliefs are, what our faith is, that doesn't matter. Those differences don't matter. We all have a common goal. We all want to move in the right direction. But yes, we do need to celebrate it. We need to celebrate it in order to save it. I just think this is it's positive messaging, and that speaks to me.
This issue of diversity, of the fact that there are such profoundly different ways of understanding, though we all end up, for whatever reason, caring for the environment. How easy do you think it is for the environmental movement to accept that it's one story amongst many, not the story?
Through CelebrationEarth, we're all finding common ground. We're not focusing on the differences. We're focusing on the overlap and where we're all moving in the same direction and helping each other and moving together side by side as a strong movement forwards.
I mean, the Pope's encyclical, the most significant encyclical, in fact, the only encyclical on the environment the Catholic Church has ever done, Laudato Si, which he launched in 2015. Is unique for all sorts of reasons. It's got more exclamation marks in it than the previous 10 encyclicals. He's going, and what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah. It's that passion.
It's that passion. And he says it in there, this is not an encyclical, a letter, which is what it means, to the Catholics. This is a letter to all people of goodwill who care for our common home. Is that something now that you perhaps would want to be more involved with than perhaps before? I mean,
absolutely. It's about everybody. It's touching everybody. It doesn't matter if you have a faith or you don't have a faith. We need to put that aside.
Whether you can sing or not sing.
Absolutely. And it is about not speaking to distinct bubbles of people, distinct groups of people. It is about getting a mass message out there about all working together.
And in the arts dimension, again, the whole story emphasis was strong, but their very strong emphasis on heart. Was that known to you as a feature, or again, has that been something?
I think the arts do speak to your emotions, don't they? They do touch you in a way that nothing else does, and it has a way of touching you in the same way that nature touches me. Anyway, I feel a joy going out in the world. When I hear a cuckoo singing for the first time, when I go out in the morning and see a sunrise, that fills me with a joy. Some people would say it was spirituality. Some people would say that's connected with their faith. But I think that's where the arts have so much power and have so much connection. Is touching us deep down inside in a way that we never thought we would be. You know, you hear a beautiful piece of music that might move you to tears, beautiful piece of poetry that might move you to tears, whereas maybe nothing else would.
You mean a data list from the UN doesn't do the same thing?
Yeah, I would. If I read a list of species that have died in the last 10 years, that might not move me to tears, but listening to you reading those out, listening to a bell tolling, listening to people singing from their soul about that loss, that moves me to tears. So that's why the arts are so important. Got goosebumps. Sorry. Oh.
Well done. That was brilliant.